Good morning. My name is Satmari Emuka, but for the last 67 years I've been known as Emuka Satmari. I'm President Emeritus of the University of Manitoba. I'm honored to read this citation today. The highest honor the Senate of a university can confirm upon an individual is an honorary doctorate. At the University of Manitoba, the criteria include distinguished achievement in scholarship, the arts, or public service. Our honorary graduate this morning is Mr. Arnold Frieman. When Arnold Frieman arrived in Canada, he was 22 years old, homeless, penniless, and alone. From that inauspicious beginning 67 years ago, he became a pillar of his community, known for his business success and his generosity of heart. Any appreciation of the magnitude of Mr. Frieman's achievements must consider his early life. No one could have predicted when he was born or when he arrived in Canada that he would become what Jews call a mensch, a person of integrity and honor. Arnold Frieman was born in the town of Sátoraljaújhely, Hungary, and was one of 6 children in a close-knit Jewish family. Segregation by religion was enforced then, thus his elementary schooling took place in Jewish schools. Because his town lacked a Jewish secondary school or a high school, his parents sent him to relatives in Budapest for further education. He was there when he heard that Jews outside Budapest were being rounded up and shipped out of the country. To help save his family, he headed home. But his family was gone by the time he arrived. Everyone had been deported to Auschwitz. Mr. Frieman's following years were an odyssey of flight, of capture, forced labor, prisoner of war camp, and miraculous escape across 4 countries. He lived through hell on earth, and he did it as a teenager, alone. His life began to improve when a commission selected him for transfer from a displaced persons camp near Bergen-Belsen to Norway, where he received, finally, medical care, returned to school, and eventually studied electronics. In 1947, he put his learning to good use by volunteering for a year in the Israeli Air Force, but his desire to see imagined worlds drew him across the Atlantic Ocean to Canada. He arrived in Winnipeg in May 1951, knowing 4 languages, but English was not one of them. The Winnipeg Jewish Agency arranged lodgings and a warehouse job for Arnold Frieman, and gradually he found friends. The most influential was Minnie Heft, who made him part of her family, brought him back to the Jewish fold, and encouraged him to go to university. But he was broke and unsure of his English. Nevertheless, Arnold tried and passed the University of Manitoba's entrance examination. Bolstered by a $1,000 gift from Mrs. Heft, he devised a unique financing plan for his education. He drove to American wrecking yards to buy car radios, fixed them up, and sold them across Western Canada. In 1960, he graduated with a Bachelor of Arts and married a beautiful Winnipeg girl, Myra Thompson. A year later, he and Myra bought a 2-man television service operation, which Arnold transformed into Advanced Electronics, a multi-million-dollar business with 170 employees. It remains the largest independent electronics store in Western Canada. Arnold and Myra Frieman are thoughtful philanthropists who support many provincial, national, and international organizations and institutions. Among them is the University of Manitoba's partnership program with the University of Szeged in Hungary. Not only does it provide opportunities for Hungarian and Canadian academics to explore joint interests, but it also allows Hungarian professors and their students to experience Canada, a country Arnold calls a place of unlimited freedom, where people can pursue their dreams and help others to achieve theirs. Last year, the 10th anniversary of that partnership was marked by the publication of a book of essays written by Canadian and Hungarian scholars, and the 10th graduate student from Szeged arrived for a year of experiential learning. Arnold Frieman's story is certainly about resilience, resourcefulness, and courage. There is no question that his achievements and his generosity are great, but his greatest gifts to us is the lesson of his lived life, authentic to the core and imbued with his indomitable spirit. Mr. Chancellor, it is an honor for me to ask on behalf of the Senate of the University of Manitoba that you confer on Mr. Arnold Frieman the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
By virtue of the authority vested in me as Chancellor of this university, I admit you to the degree Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, with all the rights and privileges thereto appertaining. Congratulations, Dr. Frieman.
Chancellor, Harvey Sector, President and Vice Chancellor, Dr. David Barnard, new graduates, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by thanking Dr. Satmari for her kind introduction and the long-time friendship. I also acknowledge the presence of members of my family and friends. It is indeed an honor for me to be here today to speak in the presence of such distinguished company and to receive an honorary degree from University of Manitoba, which had a huge influence on me and gave me a solid foundation for my future, and to address the graduates this morning. I was born in a small town in Hungary in 1928 and raised in a tradition that favors acts of loving kindness. My parents instilled in me the importance of being truthful and helping others. They sent me to Budapest in 1943 to further my education. In 1944, I heard that the Jews outside Budapest were being rounded up and shipped out of the country. I headed back home, trying to save my family, but heard that they were deported to a place I later found out was the gas chambers of Auschwitz. My following months were an experience of capture, forced labor, prisoner of war camp, and a miraculous escape. As a teenager alone, I lived through hell on earth. My life began to improve when a commission selected me for a transfer from Bergen-Belsen to Norway, where I studied electronics. In 1948, I put my learning to good use by volunteering for a year in the Israeli Air Force, where I found out that two of my sisters were alive and living in Israel. My desire to see imagined worlds, however, drew me across the Atlantic Ocean to Canada. I arrived in Winnipeg in 1951 with nothing but the clothes on my back. By an accident of fate, I met Mrs. Heft, who had a tremendous influence on me and persuaded me to enter university. By another accident of fate, in my final year of university, I met Myra Thompson, a beautiful girl who later became my wife. We purchased a business known as Advanced Electronics, located on Portage and Langside, and a year later, we moved to Sargent. There, the company grew rapidly. In 1966, aided by my close family friend and lawyer and the wisdom of my dear wife, Myra, we moved to 1300 Portage, where we established electronics business with both a retail and a professional division. I started with 2 employees and increased the number to nearly 200. Over the course of the years, we kept up in technology, staying ahead of the competition. We built a reputation of modest prices and the service we provided to our customers. The guiding principle being that the customer is always right. Well, maybe almost always. The principal reason for the success I achieved in business and in life has been the support and advice of Myra. She showed true love and sound judgment in marrying me. She also brought out qualities in me that I did not know I possessed. Throughout my business career, I lived by the precept, quoting from Shakespeare's Hamlet, "To thy own self be true," end of quote. To me, the precept means to act honestly, truthfully, and in accordance with the ethical standards on which we have been raised. The staff of Advance enjoyed my personal protection. I protected them by helping deal with health issues, legal problems, and financial matters. I also engaged myself in community affairs, giving back to the community, which I owe so much. Many of you aspire to become lawyers, go into business, or become ecologists. For those of you who aspire to go into the practice of law, a key responsibility is to serve your clients' interest ahead of your own interest. That means to vigorously advocate the interest of your clients using creative application of law and also charging modestly those who cannot afford. For those of you who intend to go into business, know your products, master the technology, provide reliable information, let the truthfulness be your guide, give your customers meaningful service, and give back to the community. For those of you who will base your careers on environmental issues, give priority to protecting the environment so our children and grandchildren will be able to enjoy it. Make sure that you have reliable evidence and ensure that the truth emerges. The common theme for all of you is put others and the environment ahead of yourself. Respect the truth. Support your community and help people who are, for whatever reason, unable to help themselves. I congratulate all graduates on your great achievement. Part of the pleasure of your achievement is sharing it with your family. You and your families have worked hard to reach this milestone and have a good reason to celebrate. There's a Yiddish word, kvel. It means burst with pride. It describes the looks on the faces that I see here today. In closing, I wish you enormous success in your future endeavors and ask you always to keep in mind the fundamental precept, to thy own self be true. Thank you.